Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast, a Blue Wire podcast brought to you by Prize Picks. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me this lovely Friday afternoon, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good, James. I was just striking out on a sneaker drop as we speak. And screw you, Nike app, as sneakers app, as you got me again. I don't know why I keep coming back to you, but I do. And
They keep
anyway,
dragging me back in.
despite all of that, I am doing fantastic.
All right.
I'm sure there's a lot of people, to be honest, that could listen to this and I imagine the comments will be like, we can relate, Sean. There's like therapy groups for people like us.
You're a sneakerhead. How many pairs of shoes do you have, Sean?
I'll be honest, I haven't counted. It's not as many as people would think, but I also tend to stick to if you ever see me, I tend to stick to a everyday kind of beater pair that I just don't wear a lot of the shoes that I don't like to talk about it because speaking the words out loud, I admit it does sound ridiculous, but it's all right.
1,000?
Okay. It's more of like a collection. No, it's nothing like
500?
that. No, it's nothing like
Okay,
that. But it's
so
fine.
I had a
Let's
buddy who
just
worked with me.
say,
I had a buddy who worked with me at Copeland's who is a super Jordan sneakerhead and like well over 1,000 pairs. And so anytime the new Jordans would come out, they would actually send like 3 or 4 pairs. It depends on the shoe, like extras for him
mhm,
to the store. So he would get those. So at his parents' house for years, he had like a full-fledged like room full, like from the floor to the ceiling, probably like from one wall to the next, and then probably like 5 rows deep,
yeah,
and if he so he would have a pair of the run that he might wear, and if he did ever wear them, he'd mark the box so he knew that pair had been worn, and then when he was done, he would scrub them from top to bottom, put this stuffing back in the shoe, wrap them back up the way they are in the box, and leave them in there. So he was in Soul Magazine. Like they did a whole thing on him and all of his Jordans at one point. So shout out to my guy, Corey Takahashi.
there you go.
There we go. Welcome into the Kings Beat podcast. There is hope that Brenden will join us. He's writing currently and trying to break
Hmm.
free and join us here on the podcast. But we have lots to talk about. Um, I think it's been just about a week since we last spoke here on the Kings Beat podcast. And in that time, the Kings have had a couple of wild wins, a really bad loss. It's kind of been a yo-yo all over the board season. So before we jump into that, Sean and I are going to ask you to, if you're watching here on YouTube, give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Uh, Jump on board, become a subscriber here to the Kings Beat YouTube channel. Give us a rating and review wherever you're listening to podcasts. And then, if you don't mind, jump on board with the Kings Beat. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber so you get invites to everything that we do here at the Kings Beat. Sean, let's just, it's sort of a general before we jump into like a specific game. But this week sort of highlights what we've seen all season from this team, and that is that they can beat the best of the best, and they're really good in those games. They're undefeated against the top 6 teams in the Western Conference, and with them being one of those, so like 5 teams. Teams like Minnesota, Denver, Dallas, OKC, the Lakers. They haven't lost any of those teams. But then it's the teams that are behind them in the standings that they don't seem to be able to not only beat, but really compete with. So they've lost a total of 9 games. Those 9 games have only come to 4 teams. So they've lost to the Pelicans 3 times, the Rockets twice, they've lost to the Clippers twice, both on back-to-backs, and then who else? Oh, the Warriors twice. But it's this weird, like, all over the board thing that to me is a bit jarring, and it's a bit, like, out of character from what we saw last year. But what are your thoughts on that specific issue? It's not only that they are winning and losing in weird fashion, but there are plenty of games this season where I don't think they competed at all. And that's not
Hmm.
something I remember thinking from last year.
Well, I think what you're seeing is a beginning of the season where it is very crucial to the Kings' success that they get out to a good record and take advantage of early scheduled games, just like last season. But the difference between this season and last season, as they go through this journey, aside from kind of health, because obviously there's some lingering injuries and some injuries and absences and things that have almost really plagued this team almost at every step of the way. Almost every game I think this season they've had something. So no really clean bill of health, although look, no one's going to feel sorry for you, and honestly it could be a lot worse. You go through some of these injury reports from other teams and they're long. I mean, they're 6, 7, 8 players deep. So while the Kings have had their moments, they're also pretty blessed overall to still have a competitive product that they put out there. I also just think, James, like Mike Brown has harped on it all I'd say summer and training camp, and you're seeing it right now. You're not sneaking up on anybody. Teams have kind of figured out how to play you, rough up your point guard, rough up your center. If you have personnel that's long and physical, the Kings struggle against things like that. The Kings also struggle against teams that like to push the pace, which is ironic because the Kings are the kind of the poster child of pushing the pace over the past year and a half or so, and they're not really keeping their foot on the gas in that department. And the other problem is you're living and dying by the three. So in games in which the Kings struggle to shoot from the perimeter, and all you have to do is look at Monday night's game in Sacramento against Brooklyn, you set a franchise record with 25 threes, and then you follow that up with a clunker in LA and the Clippers. And certainly the second nights of back-to-backs and back-to-backs in general, the Kings have just looked pretty different. I'll say I do disagree with even Mike Brown's premise that there's a lack of fire, competitive nature. I feel like there is. I just feel like there's a lack of awareness when the three isn't going, that you try something else. And I'll look back, I'll look back to that Oklahoma City game, not the one that they just played last night, but the one in November. And they didn't have De'Aaron Fox in that game. And they went out there and they weren't shooting the ball well at all, but then they started packing the paint. And Domantas Sabonis was fantastic in that game. And they found a way to win that game. And it was what De'Aaron Fox considered the Kings' best defensive game of this early season, and he wasn't a part of it. So I think they pulled a lot from that game and pulled that into obviously last night's contest against the Thunder. But I think, look, it's just the rigors of the NBA season. It's really, really hard to play at it's a team that struggles with consistency in general, particularly on the defensive end. I think what's jarring is that, wow, they really are a team that didn't struggle so much offensively last season are doing so this year. So I think there's a number of factors why, and I think a lot of it has to do with the adjustments on trying to be better defensively and trying to be better physically and asking players to do some things that they ordinarily wouldn't do or haven't done. But at the end of the day, you're 14-9. You've only lost to 4 opponents that you laid out. I think Kings fans and this team, for everything that they've been through, should be pretty elated by that. Even when it is a roller coaster of a season, some of these losses have looked bad, but you can chalk it up to looking out of character. And I think maybe the toughest part for fans and media alike, because we see a lot throughout what we do, is everybody looking at the Kings and saying, boy, they sure look a lot like last year's team. And what I mean by that is when they struggle with certain things, they really struggle with it here in 23-24 season as well. So not seeing some of those things cleaned up or addressed leads people to really come up with some wild theories and wild thoughts and say, boy, this is gonna be the same team that's gonna suffer a playoff exit. I just tell everyone, take a deep breath. There's a lot of season to go. MVPs and six mans of the year are not crowned in December, as much as to the chagrin of I think what a lot of people are putting out there behind you. And you have a team that's just going through this journey right now, and a lot can happen between now and the trade deadline, some of which could mean this team catches fire. But what did we talk about coming into this season? This team could lose more games than last year and still be better situated to make a deeper playoff run. I truly believe that. I truly believe this team is going to be a factor at the trade deadline, and I think they know what they know what they want. So whether or not they can get it, we'll see. But so far, so good. I think the Kings fans and media and the team themselves should be pretty happy with what's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, they're better than they were last year at this time, like
Yeah.
pacing record wise. And we had this issue, this weird thing last year where they couldn't get to 5 games over 500. They kept getting to 4 games over 500, and it was like 9 or 10 attempts to get 5 games over, and they kept falling back and not getting there. They already did that. They're already there twice. I mean, this team is really they're pacing to be much much better than last season. And like a couple of things just to they I think they've already lost like 45, 46 games to injury on the season. I think Alex Lynn is up to like 13 games missed, 14 games missed. We saw Trey Lyles miss 13 games. We saw De'Aaron Fox miss 5 games. We saw Kevin Herter miss a game. We saw 4 games missed from Keegan Murray, plus like half of another game. Like there has been a lot of these hiccups along the way. Even the illness thing, like they had Duarte and Davion, and I think Keon Ellis missed a game due to injury. So they've had a bunch of like these little tiny things that have kind of stopped them from having their full arsenal. But like a lot of that to me like is excuses. Like some of these losses and the way that they lose them are like inexcusable. For if you want to be a great team, you can't have 6, 7 losses out of your first 9 be by major double figures. Like with 10, they lost one by 10, but they've lost a bunch by 20 and 18 and even some bigger than that. And to me, that's where I don't like the letting the foot off the gas. And you talked about like the game against Brooklyn, which was spectacular, but you get to the next night against the Clippers, and it really felt like De'Aaron Fox came out firing. He looked great, and Domantas Sabonis was playing hard, and Keegan Murray started getting it going. But then Kevin Herter and Harrison Barnes were just non-factors at all. And next thing you know, 40% of your starting lineup is like not even visible on the court. And boom, the game's over. And they had no chance. And would they lose that game by like 18 or 20? That was a 40-point blowout that the Clippers and Kings kind of like came to an agreement going to the fourth quarter that neither one of them was going to continue playing their veterans or their starters or their second unit guys. So yeah, I think there is a little bit of concern. I know it's early, and I know that that's kind of the thing we write off, but I think the resiliency of the team was like the hallmark of last season, and I don't see that resiliency as of right now. There are
Hmm.
certain moments where you see it, but I
Sure.
see way too many times already where they just go, "Whoa, let go of the rope. Nope, this one's done," and just almost walk away from a game midway through, and you're just like kind of taking it back. And I know it can be a lot of different things, but it's just a characteristic that I don't think the Kings should. I think it's something they should try to clean up because
Yeah. I mean,
losing by 6 is fine. Losing by 22 is not multiple
yeah. I
times.
mean, I get that, and some of those can be difficult to sit through as a fan. But whether you lose by 1 or 50, it's still just an L. You know what I mean? And that's the mentality an athlete
Yeah.
will have, and that's what they should have. And again, there's games where they're going to get blitzed. There's Mike was I think Mike had it to his wits end last night in his pregame availability, talking about even when they won the championship, they had games like what they're experiencing already, which is
Hmm.
double digit losses and games where they don't look like nearly the same team, and it just shows you how special some of those teams were that have only lost 12 games. You think of the 72 win Bulls, you think about the Warriors that even eclipsed that. It's just
73-9. Yeah.
right. And to see a team be able to go through and only have a handful of losses, it also makes you know a team that jumps out to a great start. You look at what Minnesota has done, and maybe they're this year's Kings in a way where they're surprising some people. um, but regardless, it's just it's a lesson where I feel like there needs to be a recognizability of where you in the moment are saying something's not working, you need to adjust. um, it's one of those you have a shooter mentality with all these shooters on the team, and it's like you're going to shoot your way out of a slump, and the shooter should feel that way, sure. But I think it's up to a coaching staff to adjust and say, hey, look at our record when we score 50 points or more in the paint. Like, it's incredible. And certainly you're capable of doing that. You have a point guard who can get to his spots at anywhere in the key,
You
free
got
throw
two of them.
extended. Right. And Domantas Sabonis, who, he was so good in the 6-game streak, win streak, that is, and I think he's been really steady. We're always I'm on my end, I'm always asking for more from him because of just how talented he is. But De'Aaron Fox brings up a great point last night, which is, a lot of these times what he does is taken for granted. His ability to get rebounds and double doubles and all that, like, the numbers are there. Certainly you can see flaws in certain teams and some of the rough housing that goes on, but that's by design. I mean, these teams are coming in here and they're trying to punch first, and they're trying to set the tone. And it's unfortunate that one of the glaring really absences on this Kings team is that they don't have the ability to do that. They don't have a lot of players that are able to do that. And so, and the ones that don't really factor much into the regular equation because of you've got more talent in other areas around them. So it's something that needs to be addressed for sure. But how do you withstand that, and how do you endure it? Because you're looking at De'Aaron Fox, and that dude's taking a beating. Like, it had me thinking last night, James, after the game. Actually, it was during the game and even after the game. Is comparatively to where he was when he came into the league. Obviously, he's this really skinny kid who runs really fast and wasn't really getting into the paint nearly as much as he has in recent seasons. But you can see even 3 seasons ago when he really started making a focal point of driving to the hoop and getting into the lane, and the contact he would get, famously he wouldn't get calls. You could argue he still doesn't get a lot of those calls, but in my mind, he's taking much more of a beating now with his body even more developed and matured and all these things as a grown man compared to what he was as that kid. And it feels like he's really kind of taking a Sabonis-esque type beating every single night. I might be off on that because maybe the last few times that I've seen him play in person, we've seen him get hit in the wrist. He's got a shoulder thing last night. The way he walks sometimes can look like an old man at times, or look like something you or I would walk with, a certain gait that way. And it's it makes me wonder just how much contact he's absorbing, and how well he can wear that going forward, especially as this season unfolds, without maybe getting some help around him to take some of that abuse off of him.
Yeah. He has taken a beating this year. I also found it really interesting. Like, Sean and I were sitting there watching the Oklahoma City Thunder versus Sacramento Kings game, and it was a great game. And I
James,
think
we had human hungry hippo. That was amazing.
that
That
was
was the
wild.
best thing about last night game.
And some of those people were like, they were violent. They were swinging their hungry hippo box at other people. It was very strange.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I know that's a
but
total pivot, but that was amazing. I knew if I didn't say something about that last night, I was going to lose it. Credit to the Kings game night staff, because that was fantastic.
I thought that was fantastic. I also thought, like, hat tip to the Kings fans who booed every time Josh Giddey touched the ball. I guess that hasn't been happening in every arena, but it's happened a few times, and it definitely threw him off early on. He sort of, I think, in the third quarter got used to it and kind of stepped up into it, and looked more like the player that we've seen. But he's got some off the court stuff that is basically in California. That who knows how that's going to all play out, and we'll wait to see how it does play out, because I know, like, courts may be involved at this point. There's certainly an investigation and all that stuff. But
I will say to that point, James, he hadn't
yeah,
played in California. He hadn't, since all this stuff had come out and this investigation with.
yeah,
We can just leave it at that. I don't really want to talk about it, but
yeah. I
yeah,
don't either.
he hadn't played in California. They had played the Warriors 2 nights ago, but that was in OKC. So yeah, he hadn't made a return trip to California yet.
Well, he heard it from the Kings
Yeah, he
fans,
did. Yeah.
and I think initially people didn't understand what was going on, but then it started to grow, and then once people caught on that they were booing Giddey specifically, then it became the entire arena booing Giddey. And it's a really tough thing because, like, in pregame, there was like a family of 4 sitting on the baseline with 2 young boys holding up Josh Giddey signs, and like there's a dynamic here that I don't know how the league is going to have to deal with all this. The league is stuck with a whole bunch of stuff that I don't know how they deal with. I mean, they've got John Morant coming back in the next couple of days. He had his press conference today, which wasn't very impressive. He dipped, ducked, and dodged more than a few questions about what he's been doing to get himself in a better place where he stops making gigantic mistakes with firearms. So there was that. You got the Draymond Green situation. There is a lot going on in the league right now, and Josh Giddey is like right there at the forefront. So I just say, like, shout out to Kings fans for being noisy, and I understand it, and we'll have to see how the whole thing plays out. But definitely a weird one. But I think the point I was getting to, Sean, is that we watched De'Aaron Fox go in there, and does he talk to the officials a little bit too much? Maybe. And lately it's been a little bit more. But he's trying to fight for his place as an elite scorer and the respect that comes with that. And we're starting to see him get up to 8 or 9 free throw attempts per game. But then you go into a game where there's a guy like Shai who's extremely talented. Don't let me like get that wrong at all. He's extremely talented and he's very good. I mean, he's like Joe, like ISO Joe Part Two. Like, he really just plays the game a lot like Joe Johnson did. But it's the foul calls that he gets versus the foul calls that De'Aaron gets. And De'Aaron's out there going like full speed, running at the rim and getting, hit by guys and bumped into and taking spills. And then on the other end, you have a guy like Shai who someone sneezes on him, and you get touch fouls. And it's like all game long, you're getting touch fouls against him, and he ends up with like 18 free throw attempts. And so, first of all, kudos to De'Aaron for not being that guy, because I don't want to watch that guy play. That's really hard to watch. I don't want to watch that style of basketball. I know Kevin Martin is like one of the guys who made like getting to the free throw line famous by little herky jerky moves. But at this point, like, Shea is a really good player, and I feel like a lot of what he does is unnecessary. Like, you're just really good. Just do your thing and don't just try to get a foul call every single time. But I guess it's the way the world is, the NBA world, that is. But it's sort of my way of saying that I really appreciate De'Aaron Fox, where sure, he's snarky with the officials and he wants more foul calls than he gets, but his foul calls are legitimate. They're in the flow of a basketball game. They're him attacking the rim, him attacking the paint. And like, I appreciate the fact that he's not just out there, I don't just being trying to get a foul on every single moment of every single game. Uh, I don't know. I know, Sean, go
I'll
ahead.
say, yeah. I mean, he when he gets into the lane, certainly he's no different than Shea. He's trying to sell a call as well, but
Of course.
he has incredible dexterity, especially for someone who's going into the trees. If you know what I mean, like, you got some
Hmm.
big dudes down there, and he has a really amazing way of controlling his body. And uh, look, he got certainly frustrated. I think he was, you know, really upset at the fact that especially one specific play in the fourth quarter was deemed marginal contact. And I think he had a hard time with the whole, how are we calling certain contact marginal, and how certain contact doesn't matter, but other contact does. And so much so that even after the win, after he hugged Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, his Kentucky brethren, he went right back to Tyler Ford and the referee to try to, have a conversation. And it was very civil. It was just two dudes talking, and it wasn't like it was this huge disagreement. They had a moment there, and it was but he's trying to understand, like, what they mean by marginal contact, how he's being officiated, and obviously the beating that he had taken. So yeah, it's one of the reasons why I posed the question about him kind of taking a beating and how much he can take going forward through the season, because the way he's playing right now is a way where teams focus on him. They want to rough him up, and it's a little different than, in my mind, than years before, because I feel like the Kings were just so much non-factors, really. And last year, I think Domas was such a huge pivotal piece to their success that he was the guy that kind of took the brunt of it. But now I think that's shifting quite a bit, and now it feels like he's almost being targeted more.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he holds up. He does have a right shoulder issue coming out of that game. They tried to downplay it in post game, but like we'll see on the injury
Well,
report.
he did
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, we'll see on the injury report what it says and if he's questionable or anything for tomorrow's game. Oh, what do we got? Utah
Some,
Jazz. Utah Jazz
yeah,
tomorrow.
Utah. Something to look at, though. I mean, that right shoulder, and I don't know if any. I had pulled it. I don't have it on this computer that I'm at right now, but I didn't share it out last night. But I did go back super late last night and look at that play again, where at least he visibly, like, physically grabs his shoulder. And a few possessions later, it's only like 2 minutes. I think it happened right around the 2:21 mark, something like that. And then a few possessions later, he's coming off the floor back to the bench, and he's kind of limping. He's got kind of a walk to him,
I
but
think
all his
that he
team,
asked to come out at that
yeah,
point.
all his teammates come up, and they're giving him high fives as anybody does when they're coming to the bench, and he's using his left hand. The right arm it kind of reminded me of like a dislocated shoulder, where you don't want to move
Mm.
the arm, or you want to at least hold it up like this. He's just let it hang, and he's not moving it at all, and he's just high-fiving with his left hand. And then he goes and sits back down on the bench. Then he comes back out, and he can use his right arm fine. Like, he's still dribbling with it, he's making motions with it, he's making passes with it. So at certain points you wouldn't even know anything's wrong. So definitely something worth to monitor as they go into Saturday against Utah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something to look at. And just to the one play that Sean was talking about, the foul call, that it was an overturned call. That was an egregious mistake by the officials. Even after the fact, I believe it is weird to say. I believe I was a pool reporter last night, and if someone would have asked about that call, I would have had to go on and ask. And I don't know, like, there's marginal contact. It totally changed his speed and balance. Like, it's the basic tenets of what a foul is. If you get in the way of a player and you cause them, any interruption and their speed and balance, then it's a foul. And he clearly gets hit in the chest. And then it looked like he was fouled. Well, there was one clean block, but the other did not look like there was another player. There's three. And I don't know how you overturn that call. Like, if it wasn't called, that's one thing. And Mike Brown, his oh my goodness, that's a whole nother story. Like, his decision to try to challenge something that was not challengeable, and then to have the ref say it's not challengeable, and then say, no, you have to look at it for this. That was just such a mistake. And it could have come back to hurt the Kings later. Anyway, yeah, just kind of a weird night overall, like with
A lot,
fouls
a lot
and
of a lot of his challenges, by the way, are emotional challenges. Like, he talked about
yeah.
how he deserved to be on Shacked a Fool, and he's almost like campaigning for his own candidacy to be there. But there are a lot of times he looks at the bench and waits. But there are moments this season, especially, where he's like, nah, review it. and they come out of emotion, or it comes out of a player's emotion, and that's
Or
the
frustration.
wrong time. Yeah, you don't do frustration emotion challenges. You wait to see if your staff truly believes that there's something warranted there.
Yeah, and I think we're back to the point where I believe personally, Mike Brown probably needs to do what happened in Toronto last year and either get thrown out or pick up a tech. Because, like, if you feel the disparity in officiating, like the Kings were feeling in that game, like you could see the frustration level. At some point, you got to step up and protect your guy, because the last thing you needed was De'Aaron Fox getting thrown out of that game, and De'Aaron Fox
Right.
almost got thrown out like 4 times. So
Well,
he
and I
picked up
think
the tech, but then there was multiple times after that where he went out an official, or he said a snarky comment to an official walking back to the other end, and like sometimes the coach has to step up and take one for the team there.
I'm with you most cases, and I thought about that last night, because I thought there would that De'Aaron didn't quite get to Draymond status in terms of almost getting thrown out, but certainly by his, uh, relative emotional state, I thought, oh, is he going to get another technical? I mean, he was chirping, especially after he scored again on the other end. Thought about that. Thought what would have another technical, what would have happened, or even if Mike had gotten a technical and added a second technical to the sheet. Thought that if that had happened, I think that could have honestly given OKC life. So in that circumstance, I was kind of glad it didn't. But you're absolutely right. There are moments throughout the season, especially where sometimes that can go a long way, and not only breaking up, it's almost like a mini timeout too. Like you can vent some frustration, you can get a point across, your team might rally around it maybe, but in any case, it can tend to break up some of the flow of the game and kind of create a mini timeout, and might be a little bit more effective than trying to challenge some call that is coming out of emotion or frustration.
I hear you. Okay, I'm going to take 2 seconds of your time here to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks sponsors the King's Beat podcast. It's a super fun and exciting way to just add something different to your game watching experience. I don't take it all too serious. We have a good time as a media group, joking around about Prize Picks and about our selections for the night and talking trash. There's one or two guys that like start to freak out, a little bit of meltdown in the middle of a game here and there. But it's a good time. Cool thing right now they have going on is all kinds of promos for the holiday season. So check your Prize Picks, jump on board. There's a link in the description down below here on YouTube and in the Kings Beat newsletter. You can go check it out. It's a good time. I've had a great time with it. I'm not very good at it, and it's mainly because I've been doing like 6 picks, and that's probably not my best move. But it's also, I think I'm a little bit too positive most times, and that usually kills me because I always choose more.
You did well
So,
last night. Yeah, you did well though, right?
oh
Last
no,
night?
I think I did
Oh
horrible
no.
last night. I don't think I did anything right last night.
Sorry.
I,
Sorry.
I would have to look, but I don't think I did. No, I don't think so,
Nope, checking the
Sean.
sheet, didn't do well. Okay. So again, I see
No,
James is your North Star. He posts his picks and you do the opposite.
I would agree. So I had Keegan Murray getting more than 6.5 3-point attempts. He finished with 3. I had Kevin Herter getting more than 13.5 points and rebounds combined. He
Whoops.
had 6. I had Malik Monk less than 20.5 points and assists. He finished with 27. I had a fantasy score of Domantas Sabonis of 47. He finished with 45.7, so I did okay there. I had De'Aaron Fox with less than 3.5 turnovers. He ended up with 5, and I actually think the official number is 6. But yeah, it was choppy. Not
Gotcha.
good, not good. But either way, it's fun. I'm having a good time with
Yeah.
it. You don't have to sit there and throw a whole bunch of money and go crazy, but it adds to your viewing. At least for me, it is a lot of fun. So if you so choose, give Prize Picks an opportunity. Of all the DFS stuff, I think that it's as good as anybody that's out there, and it's a lot of fun. So, Sean, let's get back to a couple of things here. We talked a little bit about the Jekyll and Hyde, the good games, the bad games. You think that's okay for this team to have like some weird anomalies early in the season where, they aren't just perfect and they aren't just robots and they show like major flaws that they can work on?
uh, I guess now's as good a time as any to kind of go through that. I always talk about how, and I don't think this is the case necessarily with the Kings because we just talked about the record. I think everything is fine. But when you do have some of these ebbs and flows, typically it's more in line with what you see with 500 basketball. One night you're great, one night you're bad, and the inconsistencies of such, but you're good enough to sometimes keep your head right around 500 or even slightly above. I think the Kings are better than a 500 basketball team, even if their record didn't indicate it right now. You know, what I think is that right now I kind of outlined it in the beginning. I think it kind of just goes back to that. There's been such a focus on defense and trying to get better, and not use the whole, really smoke and mirrors of getting by with just scoring and at a high pace, and just kind of using that and being content with that, and being content with being beat or just being a bad defensive team. Because if you can improve just slightly in the defensive category, all the while keeping that identity, it could really go a long way into the success. So I think it's just the nature of the NBA season, to be honest. And you just feel like at any moment, and maybe it is with this homestand, because obviously you've got a ton of home games in this span. And I think the schedule is going to kind of work to your favor, and to the Kings' favor, and hopefully they can jump out on it and take advantage of it, because it'll get harder obviously as you get into the winter months. But right now is the time to kind of capitalize, and if they can do that and really kind of build that equity, they'll benefit from it.
Yeah. They didn't start building equity, it's a good way to put it, until like a lot later than this last year. So I actually think that the Kings are primed to have a really good run here, especially, Utah is a team that struggled. They can beat anybody on any given night, but
Sure.
then they get Washington, and that's a team that, like, talk about one of the biggest jokes in the NBA. Like, I don't even know what to say. They're just not serious. They're not serious, and they have not serious players. And like, I think the folks out there are still wondering, you know, like, why the Kings didn't go out and sign Kyle Kuzma. Number one, Kyle Kuzma chose to go back to a team where he knew they were going to be bad, and it shows you everything you need to know about him as whether he's a winner or not. But also, like, don't look at his stats. His stats are garbage. It's like looking at, I don't know, Rodney McRae's stats with the Sacramento Kings in the early 90s and
Ooh.
thinking that that's, not to knock Rodney, but he was never a 20-point per game guy. And then he gets to Sacramento. Him and Antoine Carr, those weren't 20-point per game guys, but they were in Sacramento because somebody has to score on a bad team. And so Kyle Kuzma realistically should be averaging 35 a game because they're that bad. And I don't know who else is taking shots there outside of Jordan Poole, but that thing's a mess. So we'll see Washington. But the homestand itself, like, I think there a Minnesota game. Like, there's some difficulty here. You got the
Right.
Jazz, the Wizards, then you got Boston, you got the Suns, you got the Timberwolves to finish it. And then you have one of the strangest 3-game road trips I've ever seen, where you go Portland, Atlanta, Memphis. So 3 time zones, and it's over like a long, well, 7-day
It's spread
period.
out. Yeah, there's a
Yes.
lot of days in between.
Yeah, so you've got, again, you've got Portland on the 26th, so the Kings have to fly out on Christmas Day. Then you don't play until the 29th, then you play the 31st, and then you're back at home on the 1st for the Hornets, the Magic, the Raptors, and the Pelicans for the final time. So the Kings play, what is it? Counting yesterday's game, 10 of 13 at home. And so you do have an opportunity to gain some traction. And then even when you do take off on a road trip, it starts off with the Pistons and the Hornets. And the Pistons are one of the all-time worst teams. Like, watching the Pistons play right now.
Yeah.
They haven't won yet, right? They still 20
They
something?
they have not snapped their their losing skid. No,
It
they have
started at 2
been
and 1.
they've got it's a 21 game losing streak officially. They are 2-22 on the season. Washington, who you mentioned just a moment ago, losers of 6 straight. They are 3-20 as we head into
And
Friday's
San
games.
Antonio? Or San Antonio?
San Antonio is just as bad. Losers of 18 straight, but they are 3-20 on the season,
Yeah, that's not
and
great.
rumored to be in the mix for Bowl. Can you imagine? I kind of want that to happen, because I feel like him and Wembenyama is like these
Oh,
intriguing twin towers would be like must see TV. I
like
still
the
think
stick
Wembenyama.
towers.
Yeah, I still think he's must see TV. I love watching him play. He's kind of going through it, obviously, with just a struggle in San Antonio, but he's a lot of fun to watch.
I think he is too. It's just a matter of time before that team starts to. I mean, it's not this year, for sure.
No,
But
God
like
no.
he's not going to be a bad player. And I mean, even still, he's averaging 19.3 points, 10.7 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 3 blocks, and 1.3 steals. Like nobody needs to cry for Victor Wembanyama. He is very inefficient from the field,
Right.
43.7 and 27.4 from three. But
Well,
kind of
like
a
you said,
mess.
someone's got to score on a bad team. You know, and again, he's going to get all the opportunity. So go out there and just do it all, and
Yeah.
get better.
Okay, let's touch on a couple of things quickly. Number one, the Kings signed um,
GTA.
Juan Toscano-Anderson to a
Since you
my
broke up there, Juan Toscano-Anderson, just in
oh
case
yeah.
the listener. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, Juan Toscano-Anderson.
Yeah.
From what I've heard, it's a non-guaranteed deal. So the Kings retain their roster flexibility through the trade deadline, basically. But Sean, I think you and I have probably heard the same thing. This is a guy that Mike Brown wanted to bring in the whole time. No?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a guy. I mean, first of all, this dude in the locker room is like when you look at the whole concoction of recipe that is the chemistry in a locker room. He's a he's one of those additions to the pie or to the cake or whatever analogy you want to use. That's like the sweetener because everyone likes it. Everyone likes it. His addition to a locker room is contagious. It's great. It's exactly what you need. Not to say that this locker room needed this like this addition in the locker room, but it's certainly welcomed. It's a welcome addition because he does play hard. He does play tough. Perimeter defense is kind of what he hangs his hat on. He can play physical. I don't think he's a great defensive player, but he certainly has things that he's known for. But he's a little
Mhm.
older now too, and I think he's played well in the G League. He was playing in Mexico City, and it's a nice opportunity to see if something can stick here. If there is something to be made, I think the tough part for some Kings fans who might just kind of yawn at the notion of adding somebody like him, it is adding another tertiary piece that isn't necessarily going to factor much into the overall relevance of their team and success of their team. But I would I would give you the example of Keon Ellis coming off of a career night the other night against OKC and what he's been able to do to elevate into the rotation, and you're seeing him close games and earn the trust of his teammates, and it's been a really good feel good story I think for him, and to see the path of another G leaguer kind of making an impact in the NBA. And it just goes to show you that anything can happen throughout the course of a season. So having that continuity with Mike Brown and somebody that he likes and thinks that, I'm trying to, this is a 3-point shooting league, and if you can get perimeter defense, you try and add that to your team. I don't know what it's going to look like yet, and whether or not he'll factor into it, but certainly an opportunity here for him to return to the NBA.
Yeah, okay, so he's 30 years old,
Right.
6'6", 210. The thing that I like about Juan Toscano, and it's funny because you brought up the Keon Ellis thing, right? So I said this when they drafted Keon. Oh, well, not when they signed him right after the draft as a unrestricted free agent. And then like we've had this moment with him multiple times. The good thing about a guy like Keon Ellis is that who he was in high school is exactly who he was in college. And who he was in college is exactly who he was in the G League, and who he was in the G League is exactly who he's proving out to be at the pro level. He is an exciting defensive player who battles through screens, who puts it all out there, who brings energy, and who can hit a three-point shot. He doesn't look to do other things. He doesn't try to push himself into some other weird box that he doesn't belong in. He's the same exact player every step of the way, and that's a really smart thing to do. If you're not a top tier athlete that's going to like be a top 5 pick, the rest of the guys in the league need to understand that they have to play a role, and whatever that role is, you need to figure it out, and then you need to play to that, and then you need to not do anything stupid added onto that. And this is what I mean. There's something sneaky. So of course, Keon has his career night, goes for 17 points. Spectacular. He shot 5 of 6 from three And when he shot 5 of 6 from 3, let me see what he's now shooting. He's now at 39% from 3. Now, here's something crazy about Keon Ellis on the season that I think people might speak to the point that I'm trying to make here. From 2, from 2-point range on the season, Keon Ellis is 8 of 9 from the field. He's shooting like 84% from 2-point range. And that's the fact that he's only taken 9 shots means something. It means that he's not doing stupid things that he shouldn't be doing. He's not turning the ball over. He's not doing crazy things that don't make sense. He's playing to his strengths, right? So that's why I would bring up Juan Toscano-Anderson. I think this is a player who not only has played with Mike Brown, but he's played on great teams where he is not going to be anything but a bit part, and he knows how to fit in. He knows what his role is coming in. He plays to his strengths. He brings energy. He brings fire. He plays defense. It might not be the best thing you've ever seen, but it's where I would take him and compare him to Chris Duarte, who Chris is in his third year but missed most of his second season. And you can see him still trying to figure out who he is on this team and what he's supposed to be doing and what his role is, and how many times he's supposed to dribble the ball and all these things. That's not going to be the case with Juan Toscano-Anderson. He's going to come in and play a role. It's a role that he knows. It's a role that he played in high school. It's a role that he played in college. It's a role that he played for the Golden State Warriors. And if he can fill that role, then maybe he gets on the court more. Does that make sense, Sean?
And yeah, and to that point though, and it's interesting because he was part of some really good Warrior teams, but then if you look at where he went after that, the Lakers and then the Utah Jazz. I mean, he's not playing in nearly as many games. He went 2 seasons where he's playing 53, 73 games with the Warriors in the 2021-22 season. And then he goes, probably got some little bit of money, got someone that's gonna take a chance on him. And when he was with the Lakers, it was 30 games. And then with Utah, it was 22 games. So it hasn't really factored well with other, there's never an analytic for chemistry. Some things just don't work. And I think the Kings are hopefully betting on that. No, he can maybe provide something. Let's see if there's any gas in the tank. Let's see if this is something that can bear out not only in practices, but potential in games as well. And maybe you have something here. But again, with it not being guaranteed and kind of give you a little bit of roster flexibility as well as you approach the trade deadline, get a sample size of some games and some practices together to see what might work. And, this team, like I said, it could look pretty different come first week of February. And if, you also have kind of Stanley Johnson, a guy who can do a lot, theoretically do some of the same things almost, but more of a scorer from that wing position. And they're looking at wings, and that's a good thing. They're doing it on the flea market, but it's a way to address some absolute needs and try to uncover every stone. And I'll look back at someone like Stanley Johnson, who's with the Stockton Kings right now. And it's like he helped LA during a portion of a season ago. He's somebody that I thought that he could help the Kings for getting them some help of what they needed. So I don't know that his career hasn't gone nearly the way I think it was projected to be, obviously, but sometimes guys get humbled and play into a role and see what happens. And I think if there's anybody that understands roles, it's Juan Toscano-Anderson. And especially when you give him somebody like Mike Brown, who's like, nope, this is what you do. He can see if he can go out and do it again and replicate what he was able to do with the Warriors.
Yeah, see, and that's a point I would make. I would rather choose a guy who knows exactly who he is and
Yeah,
play to those strengths than choose a guy who's still trying to figure out 8 years into his NBA career who he
right.
should have been, and then trying to make him into the player that these guys already are. I've felt that for a long time in the league. There are too many players who just refuse to acknowledge who they should be in the league, and they
Yep.
always think they can be more. And sometimes by being less, you get a lot more. You get to be in the league a lot more. You get to stick around a lot longer, and you get to fit in on some really good teams and have a good time and play basketball for a lot longer in your life. So, okay, let's hit on something real quick. And I don't make this the business of basketball. We have yet to see
Ooh.
Brenden, so I'm going to
I
say
know
that
Brenden.
maybe Brenden isn't showing up today. It's okay. Jake Fisher, our friend Jake Fisher, for
Who
some
hates the
reason,
Sacramento Kings cookies?
Jake Fisher hates the Sacramento Kings cookies, which is exactly where I was going with that statement. It's a strange oddity. No one else in the league dislikes the
And
Sacramento Kings cookies. They all love them. So
but
maybe
by the way,
Jake's a
that's
little
not
weird.
code. That's not code for something. He led the media cookies in the that they lay out as part of the their pregame meals
They're well known
is they are
throughout the
under
league.
attack by Jake Fisher. I've never seen anyone do that before.
Yeah, they are. The standard is a chocolate chip cookie with sea salt on top.
They go
They're
quick.
tasty. They go quick. Sometimes you'll see someone walk out with a bowl of like 6 of them. You're like, "Hey, bro, like what is happening? What is
That's
happening?
wild.
Like, why is that? That's not okay." Anyway, Jake Fisher wrote an article and said that of course, Sacramento Kings are in on. Well, everybody's in on the Toronto Raptors and what's happening there. Pascal Siakam, and he threw out something off the cuff, which I don't have it in front of me right now, but something of the point that, yeah, any deal with Sacramento would, uh, Toronto would like to center around Keegan Murray. And I
Duh.
think that's like, yeah, duh.
No
Like
shit.
I totally agree. Sean, in that situation, does the phone get hung up if you're the
No, no,
Sacramento
no, no.
Kings?
Absolutely not. Not necessarily. I mean, if you're saying that, hey, Keegan has to be a part of the deal, like certainly if you're the Kings, you're not like, yes, let's get rid of Keegan. I don't mean it like that. You're not hanging up the phone. You're looking at what options could be available in the event these guys come available. You're talking through it. You can say on December 15th, yeah, I don't really want to trade Keegan Murray. Well, they don't really want to trade OG Anunoby either or Pascal Siakam either, but they're in a position to where they might have to. And in order to get, as you saw with Tyrese Halliburton and Domantas Sabonis, if you're getting Domas, it's going to cost you. I mean, you can't just get who's on my scrap heap and let me get an all-star type caliber player. Like that's not realistic. This isn't fantasy basketball, and it a lot of times can have some crazy things that go on, but certainly we've seen deals that are more laughable, and then people go, wow, I didn't think he would be available, or oh, I can think they'd get rid of him. The Kings know what their value is. They're going to know what their value is on all their players, and it's healthy to have those conversations. And if you have someone you're interested in, you're gonna do your due diligence. But yeah, the likelihood that happens is very, very possible. And if there's a deal to be made, of course Toronto's going to want Keegan Murray. So
Are the
that's the way I look
Kings
at it.
gonna move Keegan Murray in a deal like that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think
What?
I mean, you don't know. Do you? I mean, do you know either? Or are we talking about Brenden? Brendan's popping in here.
What's
What is
Brendan showed up at
up?
the
happening?
perfect time. We've got
What's
like
up?
3 minutes left in our podcast.
We got like 3 minutes left, bro.
My
I got to
bad.
be on the radio in just a sec.
Sorry, I had work things going on.
So, Brendan, I was
That's all
just
right.
posed with the question based off of the what I like to call the no shit report that Keegan Murray would be coveted by Toronto and in any trade that involved a Siakam or an Anunoby or anything like that he's coveted by the Raptors. Obviously, that's a no brainer. But do you do it? Do you hang up the phone? And I said no. You talk these things through. It's December 15th, but ultimately, you know, you wouldn't want to give up Keegan Murray, but it's probably likely it took Tyrese Halliburton to get Domantas Sabonis. These are how these things happen. And yeah, I think it's very likely that he would be part of a deal. I'm not saying that the Kings want that to happen, but if you want to do a deal like this and that's the asking price, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, do I do this or not?
And, there's a chance that it would make you have to include less picks. Like that was part of the Tyrese deal, right? Is they didn't have to include any picks. The Kings actually got, I think, 1 or 2 seconds back. And then they still have all these assets to go out and make moves. So I don't know. Keegan is a tough sell for me on 2 guys that are expiring. Like obviously you'd kind of need to have a little bit
Guarantees.
of reassurance. Yeah, that these guys want to come back, but obviously that's iffy as well. But I don't know, man. Like I said last episode, I think that like you consider stuff with Keegan. I
For
don't
sure.
hang up right away.
Hell no.
I don't think the Kings, we could say what we would do in this situation, I don't think the Kings are moving Keegan Murray for a 29-year-old Pascal Siakam on an expiring deal. And I think the phone would be hung up pretty. They still believe he's going to be an excellent player. And they also
sure.
know that one of them is going to want like $40 million a year moving forward. And the other one is still under team control for another 2 years after this year at like 9 million, 10 million. And once you make that move for Siakam, it becomes really difficult to do anything else. And it becomes really difficult to bring back Malik Monk. It really so you can get a guy like Siakam without giving up a guy like Keegan Murray. Yeah, you're going to probably deal with going into the luxury tax, but that's with the understanding that you have a championship caliber team and that you might be able to go deep into the playoffs and potentially win a chip here in the next 2 to 3 years. So maybe you do it in that situation, but I think they value Keegan Murray way, way, way more than they would even a Pascal Siakam or OG Anunoby. Now, I think there's another tier of player that they would consider, but these two aren't on that tier.
Right.
So,
but it's just like I agree with you, and that definitely makes sense. But in these conversations, like it's about making the best offer of all the other teams rather than like just a decent offer from Sacramento's perspective. I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but I think it's important to keep in mind that like you have to outbid everybody else. And most people are probably going to have a nice player asset in there that's outside of the picks.
And to that point too, it's still very early, and some teams get a little bit more desperate. But at the end of the day, like you don't have to make the move. You absolutely don't. But at the end of the day, in order to get better, it's going to cost you something, and you have to really come to grips with that. So if you think the asking price, and again, you don't do any of those moves without assurances, as Brenden put it, guarantees that somebody's going to want to stick around or re-sign. So,
and even those aren't guarantees, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, an extension and then trade is a little difficult to pull off. And I'd have to look at their contracts and see if it's even possible. Okay, well, we're just about out of here. Before we jet, I know Brenden just showed up. No, I'm not joking. I got to be on the radio in like 3 minutes.
Yeah, my fault.
Brenden, Keon Ellis,
greatest player of all time. Like, where should can people join me with the tattoos? Like, I'm kind of thinking
still going lower back
under one. No, we were never going lower back. Sean.
Oh, I thought that was.
Yeah, no. We talked about like I think calf or something. I don't know. We're slowly moving my way up though. I don't know.
You keep touching your eyebrow. You putting it like right here?
You never know. Like maybe I was just listening to Post Malone or something. I don't know.
Just Keon.
Just Keon and then Ellis right on this side. Like it's like a
and down your cheek.
It's perfect.
In teardrops. There it is. There it is. Brenden with the Keon
teardrops
tattoo.
means something else though.
I haven't earned them.
Either way, it's fun though, right, Brenden?
It is. He's playing great. I kind of thought that honestly, eventually he would have some blunders and that Davion would work his way back into that backup point guard spot. But Keon's just continued to get better. Last night was obviously the best game that he's had so far, and shots are going down. He's one of their better shooters, I genuinely think, and those are actually starting to be converted, and he just looks comfortable. He looks comfortable. He doesn't look rattled.
That block at the rim was incredible.
Bruce Bowen-esque?
No, stop. Mike Brown said 4 times. I'm not saying he's Bruce Bowen.
I'm not saying he's Bruce Bowen, but he is Bruce Bowen. I'm not saying it though. Interesting stuff. So, all right, let's hit final thoughts. What do we got? Brenden, since you just got here.
This was a long ass episode, guys. I'm tired. No, apologies. I was just finishing some writing later today, going to the bowling event the Kings are putting on. So excited to see what that kind of looks like.
Keon.
Yeah. I don't have all too much really.
All right.
I was looking at some of their wins and loss numbers to see if there's any correlations to losing to the same team 4 times in your 9 losses. And I don't really know, man. Like there's some positional stuff with the Clippers and Pelicans, like their size, obviously, but they really just sucked on both ends of the floor in most of their losses.
I agree.
That's all I got.
Sean, what do you got for us?
I'm gonna miss the Kingpin Classic. It's one of my favorite events. It's fun to see the Kings out of their element a little bit and with the fans, and that's what it's all about. I'm gonna miss it this year because I'm doing a early birthday celebration. My birthday is the 20th. The Kings play on the 20th against the Celtics, so I'm gonna go out and be a goon tonight and have a lot of fun. So, Brenden, I'll probably send you a bat signal at some point at any of the 5 locations I'll be later today. So, we'll have some fun.
Let me know.
Didn't even get the invite.
Hey, bat signal. It goes. I don't know if it goes quite up the hill that way, but I will
It's
let
just
you
a
know.
big Hurley logo in the sky.
You could just tell me where a big S, a big Superman.
I think I'm gonna do Top Golf to start it all off. So
in
that's the
Roseville.
closest I'll get. That'll be the closest I get to James.
Jeez. Right down the street. I can't swing a golf club anymore, but right down the street, 30, 40 minutes away. Sweet. Okay, final thoughts from James. I don't know. Get tickets to the homestand. This should be fun. Like, get out there. Boo Josh Giddey, I guess. But no, this should be a really good homestand. I think
He's
Monday
not coming
night you
back.
can. No, it's very true. I think you can probably get tickets for almost free for Monday night because no one wants to see that abomination of a team. But maybe you get to see a beam get lit, right? Yes. Outside, do we have? I think we're good. That's going to
You are
do it for
late,
this
I believe.
episode. Of the Kings Beat podcast. Make sure to give us a thumbs up if you're still watching and you don't mind. Subscribe to the channel. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat. And I don't know, make sure you're following all of Brendan's work. Go to Twitter. Go to x.com to see all of the things that he is writing and doing wherever he's doing them. And make sure to go to Fox 40 and follow all of Sean's work, who's been doing great work. That was Gus Armstead you were sitting with last night, right?
I was catching up with
Pre-game?
Gus. It was fun. He used to train Mike Wilkes when he was an NBA player, and Mike Wilkes is one of their assistant coaches. So he always comes in to see Mike. Mike's like a family member. Eric and Armand and the rest of the family, they consider him a brother and a son. So
Okay.
it's
yeah. Next time I need an introduction. I haven't met Gus formally, so
yeah.
Yeah. All right, Sean knows everybody. Everybody knows Sean Cunningham. All right, so that's gonna do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast for Fox 40. Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. See ya.